There are plenty of power efficient, cost efficient, practical desktop computers in the market these days. And then there's the kind of machine that the guys at Maingear build sometimes. This here is the Maingear Rush. And the name is fitting because clearly when somebody designed this machine, they must have been jacked up on something like, I don't know, maybe a Red Bull, Viagra, and whey protein smoothie. Hey there, it's Dave Altavilla for Hot Hardware, and yes, we're going to be taking a look at Maingear's Rush today. It is an Intel octal-core powered beast with 3 NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980 Ti's in SLI, some seriously tricked out cooling, and impeccable build quality. It's kind of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but say no to drugs as usual because we already got the Rush. The Maingear Rush system that we received is an absolutely one-of-a-kind gaming PC that's built with a zero-compromise component configuration that we'll look at shortly. Designed and manufactured by the boutique New Jersey-based high-performance PC builder, the Maingear Rush SuperStock X99 system you see here is built on an InWin 909 chassis platform with removable tempered glass sides. We received a stock black matte finish model, though highly customized automotive-grade paint jobs are always an option for many Maingear systems. Side note, with an average weight of no less than 80 pounds for this bad boy, you better not be cheating on your curls or squats there, Alice. The Rush series starts at $17.99 for a base configuration, but as we have it loaded for bear, water-cooled, overclocked, and ready to rock here, it'll set you back $9,892. This is one of those, if you have to ask, you probably can't afford it kind of builds, but component selection, build quality, and the custom cooling in this machine is damn near orgasmic. Our system is based on an Intel Core i7-5960X octal-core processor with a 4 GHz base clock, but overclocked from the factory at 4.5 GHz, fully warranted with comprehensive 3-year protection, and as is the case with all Maingear systems, lifetime support and lifetime labor is covered as well. This Intel CPU is strapped into an Asus Rampage 5 Extreme motherboard with NVMe support and USB 3.1 on board as well. Also on board is 32 GB of Kingston HyperX Predator DDR4 3000 memory and both a 400 GB Intel SSD 750 NVMe SSD for the boot volume and a 1 TB Samsung 850 EVO SATA SSD drive for speedy bulk storage or perhaps a games library. The Asus motherboard supports gigabit LAN, 3x3 dual-band 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, 10 rear panel USB 3 ports, 2 USB 2, and the system comes with 3 more side panel USB 3 ports, a USB-C type Thunderbolt port, and front panel audio ports. The Rampage 5 Extreme also supports Asus Supreme FX 2014 audio with extra shielding and premium capacitors. For graphics, Maingear set up the system with none other than 3 NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980 Ti graphics cards and 3-way SLI. Yeah, that's about $2,000 of graphics firepower, and for VR and 4K gaming, these GPUs will shred the latest game titles on ultra image quality settings. All 3 of these top-of-the-line GPUs and that beast of an octal-core Intel CPU are cooled by what has to be one of the most badass liquid cooling solutions we've ever seen in a gaming PC. This is Maingear's SuperStock Crystal Hardline tubing setup, which is a custom open-loop system that uses a special green, anti-freeze, antimicrobial, non-conductive cooling liquid, and it flows through a labyrinth of shatterproof PETG tubing and EK water blocks. In fact, it's a dual radiator system with a 360mm copper core radiator in the rear and a 280mm copper core radiator in the front of the system with high-flow, low-noise static pressure fans strapped to both. This dual pump setup, as well as a huge reservoir on the top of the chassis with another small reservoir and pump setup in the rear, offers a ton of flow through the system, even when dialed down to 40% in the BIOS, which, by the way, keeps the system stealthy quiet. At this setting, the 3 beefy NVIDIA GPUs and our overclocked Intel octal-core CPU don't even break a sweat under load. Incidentally, those 980 Ti's have a 250 MHz core and 350 MHz memory overclock applied to them as well, but under load, they didn't warm up much above 45C. And all of this light-dimming, monster benchmark-busting technology is powered by a 1200-watt Corsair Professional Digital Series AX1200i power supply that is 80 plus platinum certified with green origami wiring, no less. But let's take this opportunity to walk around the rest of the chassis a bit. Of course, there's the appropriate amount of cool blue and white LED lighting strapped throughout the inside edges of the case to illuminate things in proper pimped out fashion. But removing the right side glass panel shows the back side of the case and the motherboard area where the cables are routed behind the tray. To call this origami would be fitting because everything back here is so neat, clean, and zip-tied away that you could pretty much eat off of it. The build quality and workmanship here is, in a word, impeccable, and it's truly a work of art. The in-wing chassis selected here, however, does have one somewhat notable drawback, and that is the backside of the case is extended to make room for liquid cooling solutions, but that also puts the motherboard back panel I/O plate recessed inside behind a pass-through trim plate at the rear of the chassis. Removing that back plate gives you nice clear access to the rear liquid reservoir and pump, but getting to that back panel I/O on the motherboard can be a reach in spots. If you're a set it and forget it type, this shouldn't be a problem, and there's still 3 USB 3 ports, USB-C, and audio ports on the left side bottom edge of the case. But if you want to access the rest of the ports on the motherboard I/O panel, you're going to be digging on occasion. With the system, you get the usual assortment of cables, accessories, and hardware that come with the Asus motherboard, Corsair power supply, and in-wing case, including spare SATA cables, spare PSU power cables, and various other supplies like zip ties, screws, and standoffs. And since you've been there and bought that, you get the swank Maingear t-shirt and mousepad too, of course. Finally, Asus also bundles their OC panel device, which doubles as a handheld overclocking controller for open-air bench setups with the motherboard, or mounted in a 5¼ drive bay, it works as well. It allows you to dial in system overclocking settings without going into the BIOS. Documentation with the Rush is also meticulous, and it includes your shipping configuration sheet, as well as all supporting driver CDs and a Windows CD, in this case Windows 10, as well as a detailed custom user manual with troubleshooting tips. Finally, you get a Maingear Rush SuperStock pit crew log that shows how the system was configured, tested, and burned in, as well as a few top-level benchmarks and associated sign-offs from the technician that built the machine. In this case, you can see here we've got a 4.5 GHz overclock specified, and the benchmark numbers that Maingear pulled from the machine before shipping. It's pretty much the white glove treatment all around. But enough of all this periphery, let's get down to business. How does this 3-way SLI octal-core boutique beast perform? For one thing, it's very cool, and for the horsepower on board, it's very quiet as well. Under load, you hear the pumps whirring and the fans spinning, but nothing about this system is acoustically offensive in any way. In fact, again, for the compute resources on board, it's impressive how quiet the Rush is, actually. But let's look at some quick benchmark numbers, of course. 3D Mark Firestrike Extreme gets sliced and diced into oblivion at over 19,000 3D marks, and the Rush is the fastest gaming system we've tested to date in this benchmark. And what's this? The Division, running flawlessly in 3-way SLI. Well, the benchmark is anyways, after a few updates. We were impressed to see 4K resolution at ultra settings humming along north of 66 frames per second. And how about Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor at 4K and high image quality settings at over 133 frames per second? That ought to cut it. Or maybe Cry Primal at 4K with ultra quality settings at 57 frames per second. That's kind of snappy as well. Basically, anything you could throw at this rig at 4K resolution and max image quality settings will be chewed through like a pack of rabid dogs on a thick, juicy T-bone steak. In terms of CPU performance, an overclocked octal-core Intel Core i7 5960X at 4.5 GHz pretty much annihilates any multi-threaded workload you throw in front of it as well, of course. And our system's 400GB Intel SSD 750 boot drive offers over 2.3 gigabytes per second of peak sequential read throughput and over 1 gigabyte per second of write throughput, so the rest of the system is definitely up to the task as well. In a nutshell, the Maingear Rush, though pricey, and let's face it, as configured for us, just plain flat-out opulent, is truly a work of total craftsmanship. From its special neon green coolant to its crystal hardline tubing, dual radiators, dual reservoirs and pumps, and slick lighting bling, this machine is a real showpiece. It's the kind of machine that definitely deserves to be on a desktop rather than under it. At 80 plus pounds, you're not going to be lugging this bad boy to a LAN party anytime soon, unless you're truly hardcore, but you're still going to want to show it off. In fact, it's a regular conversation piece at the house party and fitting for prominent placement in your living room if you have that kind of swank killer geek setup. The Maingear Rush is totally hot hardware. Either way, make sure you stop by HotHardware.com for our full review and mash those like and subscribe buttons if you've enjoyed this for more reviews, event coverage, and our 2.5 Geeks webcast. I'm Dave Altavilla for Hot Hardware, and you've just had a major Maingear Rush. Thanks for stopping by.